Today I'm going to speak with Professor Matthew Cohen, a Dalang, a puppet player, and a professor at the University of Connecticut in the United States. Hello, Professor Cohen. How are you? Piye kabare?
Sai.
And then, how's wayang or how's the pedalangan in the United States?
So in the United States, pedalangan happens mostly in the context of university gamelan groups or community gamelan groups, which invite dalang sometimes from the United States and sometimes from Indonesia to come and perform on a project basis.
Why you choose Cirebon style of wayang?
Yes, that's a very good question. So in Indonesia, there are many styles of wayang. I started with this style here. This is a puppet from Solo, from Central Java. But in 1993, when I decided to, I was embarking on my field work for my dissertation, and I felt that the solo style, which I had studied in the 1980s, was very well represented in the scholarly literature. So I wanted to study a form of wayang which was much less known, but still very active. Hundreds of dalang. Wayang lives very much both at the level of the kraton, but also in the royal courts, but also in the countryside. And it's performed for rice harvests, for planting ceremonies, for weddings, for circumcisions. It's part of everyday life. And it's a very communicative form where the language is much less elevated than the language in Central Java, much easier for everyone to understand, including young people, mixing in dangdut, which is a popular form of music. And the dalang is much more of a storyteller and is telling very good wayang stories, I feel. So I felt that I had an affinity with this form of wayang. And the people of Cirebon are much more accepting, and as a rule, of outsiders. In Cirebon, I didn't get that kind of perception, but I could talk to people in Javanese. I could perform wayang. People didn't necessarily think I was a good dalang, but I was allowed to perform wayang as someone else from Cirebon was.
Who is your favorite dalang in Indonesia?
So when I first was studying in the 1980s, my favorite dalang was a really remarkable dalang named Godot Darman, who in his youth had been a bandit, thief, according to a legend anyways. And he had been an actor, and finally he became a dalang, and he violated all the rules. Every rule which you could violate in wayang, he turned things up on and did things which were absolutely remarkable. I have a daughter who has studied some wayang.
Okay, so tell me about your daughter. Why she studied wayang too?
In 2009, when my daughter was 11 years old, I spent a sabbatical in Yogyakarta. And so in Yogyakarta, there's a special form of wayang called wayang kancil, which is performed for children mostly. And the main characters are not people, but animals. And so I encouraged her to study wayang kancil, a way to improve her Bahasa Indonesia, to improve her Indonesian, and to learn about children's culture. And together we did a number of performances at Sono Budoyo Museum in Yogyakarta, and later in the United Kingdom. We performed together a number of times, where I did a long wayang or short wayang, 2, 3, 4 hours, and she did a little segment of 10 minutes within a comical scene called the Limbukan. So it was a wayang within a wayang which she performed.
All right. Professor Cohen, how do you teach wayang in this pandemic?
I feel I'm a teacher, I'm a professor, and my puppetry students are desperate for face-to-face contact. I think it's really hard to teach wayang as an art form, that there's some things you can teach about the culture of wayang, but teaching the practice, where to put your fingers on a puppet, how to move an object in three-dimensional space, right? That's very, very hard to do.
All right, Professor Cohen, can you show us your certificate?
So I have a few certificates. The first I received in 2000 and, let's see, this is from 2018. This is a Nugraha Piagam from Kraton Kasepuan, which is one of the royal courts of Kasepuan. And this came to me when I did a performance there, sponsored by the Ministry of Education and Culture. I did a tour of Java, going all over the north coast, from the west to the east. And it started, the tour started at the Royal Court, which is one of the centers for wayang. And I have a certificate as well in 2009 from another kraton, the kraton called the Kecurbuan, where I actually lived for a year. I lived inside of one of the royal houses. And then more recently, I got a surat kekancingan from the royal court of Surakarta. And that was in conjunction with a performance which I did combining wayang kulit with wayang golek. This is a wayang golek puppet or a rod puppet. His name is Lamsi Jan.
Can you show us like 30 seconds of performance with your wayang, Professor Cohen? Because we are going to launch our news program. It's called Southeast Asia Today. And can you show us? Can you perform like about 30 seconds with your wayang? Anything about Indonesia and news about Indonesia?
Okay, well, I don't have a screen set up, but I have a couple of wayang. This is Gatot Kaca, Benteng Amarto, as he's called in Solo, and he is the son of Bima, who's a great hero. And here you just see a rank and file Raksasa. Sakoi, hey, Aja Kleru. Yang durung-durung ning aku kangarane Gatot Kaca ya. Ya ora kaping ora pindo gawe. Hei. Pasau kulo. Hey.
Oh my God, I must say I'm very impressed by Professor Matthew Cohen.
Very impressive.
When he changed his voice and he started speaking in Javanese, if I'm not mistaken. I really, really appreciate when people invest time to actually immerse in another people's culture, like what Professor Matthew Cohen did. Or for us, for any of us really, like for us Indonesians, we can also immerse ourselves in, I don't know, Western culture or other Eastern culture. Because I do believe that when we immerse ourselves in other people's culture, this creates an understanding. This creates a bond that, at the end of the day, we're only humans, and there's not much difference between all of us.
We're all the same.
Right?
I completely agree with you, Marissa, especially, being Indonesians. It's
You're
such
mixed,
an
right?
honor.
You're like
Yes.
Dutch and Indonesian.
There we go. There's an understanding of cultures and traditions, but seeing a foreigner take so much pride in our heritage and our culture, it's amazing, and it creates it's as if they're ambassadors of Indonesia to their homeland or even other countries. So that's amazing. That was really good.
Thank you, Professor Matthew Cohen.